Well, we have reached our first weekend of the NASCAR off season, our first Sunday of no NASCAR. And yeah, all I say is after 1 week of it letting it soak in, it still feels great to be the champs. But yeah, even though there's no NASCAR for the next 3 months, and not much left in terms of motorsports or sports in general except NFL, we do have some F1 to talk about today. The Turkish Grand Prix happened. I would have talked about it earlier, but I needed a few hours of sleep since this race started around where I live. It started around 5 in the morning. Yeah, the F1 struggle is truly real, having to wake up at 5 in the fucking morning for a race. I'm usually used to waking up at like 7 or 8 or even 9 a.m. 5 a.m., man, that just fucking kills you. But yeah, Turkish Grand Prix happened today. Of course, the big headline entering this race was Lance Stroll starting this race on the pole. Yes, Lance Stroll finally got his first career pole. Only took him 4 seasons. And of course, the big headline is that Lewis Hamilton enters this race with a chance to lock up his 7th F1 World Championship, and had shot to tie Michael Schumacher for most titles in F1 history. Of course, Lewis can lock it up with a solid run, or if Valtteri Bottas finishes 6th or worse. Well, lap 1. Well, the race started as wet conditions on the full wets. Lap 1, everything went right for Lewis Hamilton because Valtteri Bottas spun out on the first lap in the first turn. So right off the bat, everything Lewis needed to happen happened. Yeah, throughout this race was mainly dominated by Lance Stroll. Like, Max Verstappen had a lot of speed early until he blew it by spinning out while trying to pass Sergio Perez for second. Like, I'll be honest here, Verstappen got too greedy on that move, and that's why he spun out badly. Like, Verstappen, I understand Verstappen I understand hard racing, man, but sometimes he just can't be too greedy. It always bites you in the ass when you get too greedy. So yeah, and then once Verstappen spun out, he never truly recovered from it. Early in the race, though, everyone would switch to the intermediate tires when the track started to dry up a little bit and the rain really stopped being heavy. It was pretty light. But yeah, and of course, the more good news for Lewis was that Bottas spun out an additional 2 times throughout the race. So far, everything Lewis needed to have happen to have everything go his way went his way. So pretty much it didn't matter then at that point where Lewis ran, because with how Bottas was struggling, Lewis was going to lock up the title by default. But yeah, most of this race, Lewis Hamilton, he was pretty much around a 5th place car most of the race. He hung around 5th to 6th all day, even 4th. Like, he mainly hung around Sebastian Vettel all day. But really, this race, it came down to pit strategy and who could make it on the intermediate tires. Like majority of the field pitted for intermediates for a second time, but then Lewis Hamilton decided to stretch it on to tire management. No Bono, the tires will not be dead this time. And somehow, Lewis Hamilton was able to make his tires go almost 40 laps. He was able to go almost 40 laps on a set of intermediates. And Lewis Hamilton, by only having 1 stop in this race, Lewis Hamilton would come through and win the Turkish Grand Prix on pit strategy and make his tires last to the end. Then again in this race, Lewis Hamilton really just took it easy all race, and yeah, he was able to conserve the tire life by just not taking it easy and just not fucking up. And Sergio Perez even made it to the end on a set of inters. So yeah, pit strategy really became keen. And Sergio Perez gets his first podium of the season, so how about that? And of course, late in the race, Charles Leclerc had the podium locked up, and then he locked his tires up and fell all the way from 2nd to 4th in the final turns. And with Leclerc's mess up, it allowed Sebastian Vettel to lock up his first career podium of the season. Vettel finally got a podium this year. The Spinola curse did not get Vettel today. It seems like the fucking Ferrari choke curse went to Leclerc today. Poor Charles. But man, Charles, you had 2 podiums this year. I think this time it was Vettel's turn to have a podium. It was time for Vettel to have his moment this year. But yeah. And also with Lewis's career win 94. Yep, make room on top of that mountaintop, Schumacher. We have another 7-time champion in Formula 1. As Lewis Hamilton locks up his 7th World Championship. His 7th F1 title. So for the 4th consecutive year, the 7th time in Lewis Hamilton's career, and for the 6th time in 7 years, Lewis Hamilton will get to take out the Metro card and hop aboard the W train. But hey, congrats to Lewis Hamilton on the win and becoming the world champion again and tying Schumacher. And the funny thing was, for the longest time, for the last few years, everyone always talked about how Schumacher's records would never be broken or can never be matched. Here's the one thing everyone underestimated. In sports and in life, records are made to be broken. But yeah, Lewis Hamilton is officially the GOAT. He's the greatest driver in Formula 1. And of course, after the race, Lewis Hamilton, of course, was crying on the radio. Yeah, Lewis crying after a win. That's a rarity. You never see that often. That almost never happens. But yeah, I mean, the magnitude of this win, this win would help Lewis lock up a 7th world championship. But yeah, Lewis Hamilton now. 10 wins on the season. And Lewis Hamilton is now a 7-time champion. And of course, on the big update was about Lewis Hamilton's future in F1. Lewis, of course, saying that he has no plans to retire anytime soon. Yet. To be honest here, I think the earliest I could see Lewis retiring is 2021. If he wins an 8th championship and gets to 100 wins. Because you look at what Lewis Hamilton has accomplished in F1, the list of things Lewis hasn't done yet in F1 is very low. I can't even think of one thing Lewis hasn't done yet. Well, except winning an 8th championship and winning 100 at races in F1. I think those 2 things are the only things Lewis hasn't done in Formula 1 yet. Lewis has done it all. He's done it all, man. He's the GOAT. He's the greatest driver. I admit, I've never been the biggest Lewis Hamilton fan in the world. Never really liked Hamilton, but you know what? I have a lot of respect for him, and I always give credit where it's due. Lewis Hamilton, he earned the title. He's the greatest driver. I'm not afraid to admit it. Lewis Hamilton is the greatest driver in Formula 1. He's very talented. And for all those Lewis Hamilton haters that want to say, oh, Lewis Hamilton was only great because of the car and equipment around him, let me show you the 2012 and the 2013 constructor standings. Because notice how the year before Lewis Hamilton showed up at Mercedes, Mercedes was a mid-pack team. And in 1 year, Lewis took it from a mid-pack team to a title contender. Within 1 year. Granted, though, 2013, they were no match for the Red Bulls and Sebastian Vettel's dominant season, but still. But let's ignore that. For Mercedes' dominance as of late, mainly 3 names have really been the big key factors in it, too. Lewis Hamilton, Toto Wolff, and the late Niki Lauda. I should also say Nico Rosberg also played a good part in it, too. Especially with Rosberg pushing Lewis Hamilton to his limits from 2014 to 2016. But yeah, those are the 4 main names that really led to Mercedes' dominance as of late. Plus, adding the fact that they were sandbagging pretty much around that time before Lewis showed up, before the 2014 regulation changes. But yeah, congrats to Lewis Hamilton on a 7th championship. So Lewis Hamilton is the champion for Formula 1 this year. Again. And now 2021, Lewis will have a shot to go 5 in a row. Something that's only been done twice in F1. Only 2 drivers in F1 history have won 5 titles in a row. Juan Manuel Fangio and Schumacher. The only 2. Could Lewis Hamilton add his name to that list? We'll have to wait and see. See, I imagine that Lewis Hamilton's going to sign an extension with Mercedes. Probably a 1-year extension. So Lewis can have that shot in an 8th championship and 100 wins. I honestly feel like if Lewis gets the 8th title next year and gets 100 career wins, I could see Lewis retiring after 2021 and go out on top. Because really, after Lewis accomplishes an 8th title and 100 wins, what is there left for him to accomplish in F1? He's lived a dream. He's accomplished everything he would possibly want to accomplish in his career. And really, after 100 wins and 8 championships, Lewis would really benefit nothing staying with Mercedes after that. But yeah. And of course, the remaining, now there's 3 races left. We got the 2 races in Bahrain, the doubleheader. And then we got Abu Dhabi to end the season. I would imagine Lewis Hamilton probably wins Abu Dhabi again since he owns that track like the back of his hand. But yeah, I could see probably Bottas getting 1 more win this year. Since really there's like nothing to race for. So fuck it, why not? But yeah. Congrats to Lewis Hamilton. Congrats to all the Mercedes fans. And yeah, our 3 champions in NASCAR, IndyCar, and F1 this year. IndyCar, Scott Dixon. F1, Lewis Hamilton. NASCAR, Chase Elliott. So let's have a toast to champions. Cheers. So yeah, in terms of the motorsport greats, Lewis Hamilton is now officially among the greats. Because 7 championships has really been the threshold in, NASCAR, IndyCar, and F1. So, yeah, when you think of 7-time champions, of course, you think of names like A.J. Foyt. You think of Richard Petty. Think of Dale Earnhardt. You think of Jimmy Johnson. Think of Michael Schumacher. And now, add Lewis Hamilton to that mountaintop. So, yeah. Of course, the F1 free agency market's going to be interesting, though. Especially with Red Bull, since Red Bull hasn't decided what's going to happen now with Alex Albon. With Albon once again underachieving in that ride. Honestly, Pierre Gasly should get that ride, but Red Bull is pretty much going to be hell-bent on screwing him over again. With Pierre Gasly staying another year at AlphaTauri for 2021. Honestly, Pierre Gasly deserves a second chance. He deserves another shot at a top team. I would say maybe Pierre Gasly should look elsewhere because I don't think he's ever going to get that second chance with Red Bull. I don't know. For Mercedes, if Mercedes is looking at options to replace Lewis Hamilton by 2022 or so on, when Lewis decides to hang it up, maybe they should look at a certain Frenchman for AlphaTauri, who won at Monza earlier this year. Because you know what, Pierre Gasly, he deserves a second chance with a top team, and he's not going to get it at Red Bull. I imagine Red Bull would probably look at either Nico Hulkenberg or Sergio Perez. There's still some open rides available. We even got an open spot at Haas, 2 open spots with Haas going on a full blow-up. Getting rid of Grosjean and Magnussen. At least, thank God that Roman Grosjean's going to be out of a ride next year. Thank fucking God. Who knows, maybe George Russell finally leaves that shithole called Williams. And goes to a better team to showcase his talents. But yeah, going to be an interesting couple weeks in F1 to decide what's going to happen in with free agency and who's going to go where for 2021. But yeah, anyway, that's going to wrap it up for the Turkish Grand Prix review. Congrats to Lewis Hamilton on a 7th title. So yeah, I believe it's next week will be the first of the Bahrain races. And then Abu Dhabi, only 3 more races left. Gonna be interesting, especially with Bahrain doing that interesting track layout, which almost looks like a oval layout for the second of the doubleheader race. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. But before we end this off here, for Valtteri Bottas, he can take out the Metro card and hop aboard the L train. But his ride will be short-lived, because he's arrived at Elimination Station. And for that, he's going somewhere different, because for the final time this year, for Valtteri's failures of having a good enough season, for his failures of being consistent enough to compete with Lewis Hamilton this year, his failures to garner enough wins to compete with Hamilton for the title this year, his failures of not being strong enough to contend for a title, and his hopes and dreams of winning his first career championship. Consider Bottas's name written down in the Death Note, as his season has been absolutely deleted.
There's only one thing left to do. Gotta write their names in the Death Note. Delete!
Delete. 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 Deletion.
You will rest in peace.